Welcome to fifth webinar of CMCL Famer series on exploring some online tools for using humanities in the present COVID era. To start with, I invite Dr. Satendra Singh, who is from Department of Physiology, University College of Medical Sciences, and also an international scholar associated with University of Chicago. And he has got a tremendous work in this field. And he was also instrumental in getting number of competencies in the new curriculum. And humanities in a way is something which is new to our curriculum too. So Dr. Satendra.
Good evening, everyone.
We also have with us Dr. Amir Maruf Khan. He's from Community Medicine, Department of Community Medicine, University College of Medical Sciences. And he's also associated with the Medical Humanities Group and doing a lot of wonderful work in that area. And Dr. Amir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be with you all.
We have with us Dr. Poonam Lumba, and she's from Maulana Azad Medical College from Department of Microbiology, and she's also working a lot. This group is working a lot in that area. So we welcome all the speakers, and I hand over it to the lead faculty, Dr. Satendra.
Thank you, Dr. Badial. So today we will be talking about what are the various online tools for using humanities. First of all, we need to know what do we actually mean by health humanities. So as you can see in this portrait, health humanities is an integrated, transdisciplinary, and philosophical approach to record and interpret human experiences of illness, disability, and medical interventions. In simple language, it is basically acquiring alternative perspectives on health and illness from the disciplines which are outside the realm of mainstream medical curriculum, be it literature-based, be it performing arts-based, be it visual arts-based, or be it mixed intervention-based. At the University College of Medical Sciences, we have been exploring the questions at the interface of health and humanities for the past 11 years. We're trying to find how we can apply the tools from the field of health humanities or the social sciences and the arts and the literature and drama, and how we can use them to explore patient-provider relationships. Over the years, on the past decade, we have used multiple strategies. We have conducted workshops locally, nationally, internationally, with medical faculty, with students, with nursing professionals, with physiotherapists, as well as with patients. And based on those experiences, we have come up with this ABCDE paradigm. So what is this ABCDE paradigm? This is basically an integrated transdisciplinary health humanities approach to teach health professional students analytical attitude, to teach them ethical and professional behavior, to teach them effective communication. In the last webinar, we heard Dr. Siraj talking about that effective leadership is all about effective communication. So here goes effective communication. Respect for diversity. And diversity here includes not only those who are from the marginalized section of the society, but also those having diverse viewpoint and diverse opinions. So this is the responsibility of a leader to take diverse opinion into perspectives. And finally, E stands for empathy. We have to shift our stand from being sympathetic to being empathetic. The Medical Council of India has recently come up with a new competency-based curriculum, and they have described the 5 roles of an Indian medical graduate. And these are clinician, professional, communicator, leader, and lifelong learner. If we can see in this slide that these are basically in sync with what we proposed as the ABCD paradigm, because a clinician and a professional, they need to have the analytical attitude and ethical and professional behavior. They need to make effective communication. They need to respect diversity, and that's why they can be a good leader. And they have to be a lifelong learner because they have to, the current times, for example, they are the best example of uncertainties. And they need to understand their biases, their deficiencies what lies ahead, and based on that, they need to empathize with everybody to take them forward. So what are the specific tools by which we can understand these humanistic competencies? In a nutshell, we can say that we can test the clinician's professional behavior by constantly engaging in reflective capacity. Since in the current pandemic times, COVID times, we're talking about digital communications. So there comes the scope of digital humanities. And when we're talking about a leader and a lifelong learner, there comes the role of social justice. In the previous talk, Dr. Siraj, once again, I'm referring him, he talked about PPP, post-pandemic pedagogy. In fact, in the current pandemic as well, the pedagogy can be explained by this particular instructional core, that we need to depend upon four important things. The first one is the student to interface interaction, the student to content interaction, the student to faculty interaction, and the student to student interaction. In the previous four webinars, we have talked extensively about the student to faculty and the peer-to-peer interactions. So in this particular session, I'll stick to the first one. Kubler-Ross has developed a model of 5 stages of grief, and it is very much applicable to the current coronavirus pandemic. If you see in this particular graph, at the beginning of the 2020, we were looking at 2020 in a very promising way. There was a stability. And within a few weeks, the disaster struck the whole world. The 5 stages, which are explained by the Kubler-Ross model, which can be applied to this pandemic, is the first one is that there is a denial. For a very long time, people were in a denial mode. That how can a simple flu kills so many people globally? It was followed by anger, that this can't be true, this can't happen. Why nobody is doing about anything about this thing? The third stage was bargaining. There were plans of lockdown, with curtailing the liberty, as well as talking about that there will be a regressive step on the economy. So we're talking about how to impose the lockdown in the most ethical manner. This was followed by a phase of depression. And then the 5th stage is the stage of acceptance. We are constantly moving from one stage to the another. So now this is the first poll of this seminar. We would like to know in what particular stage are you in? So here goes your poll. Good. So that was a bit expected, because when people are signing up for this particular webinar, probably they are looking for their own professional development. So I was expecting that a lot of people will take the last acceptance option. But again, if you can look at this particular poll, there are 26 people who are in the phase of bargaining and as well as depression among the people who are attending this particular webinar. There's still one person who are in the mode of denial. So first of all, let's talk about the first interface, that is the student to interface. And we just saw that it can be a problematic way for even the faculty. So we can expect the same to happen with the students as well. And that is why what we call it as a vulnerable praxis. When we're talking about the online classes, we need to understand that in the whole of the country, we are still grappling with the issue of internet inequality. There are various regions, there are hilly areas where there is no electricity, forget about the internet connections. So we need to talk about somehow to introduce the feature of digital equality. So how can we do that? So this is what we have been doing, the universities, the medical institutions, and the colleges, they are doing is that we are in a lockdown state, but your studies will not suffer. We are making the classes online, which is a very, really good move, because that's what we have been asking for. Let's work from home as well. So what has been decided is that let's treat everyone in the same manner. That's what we call as equality. So we are going online. We are starting with the online classes. So everybody has to report sharp 9 a.m. tomorrow on XYZ platform, which is a live webcast. But as you can see in this particular image, there are still a few people, despite our best intention, who are left behind. How to include those people who are left behind? There is a concept of equity, and very often people get confused. They often used these words synonymously. They're not synonyms. Equality is different than equity. Equality means treating everyone in the same way. whereas equity is about fairness and providing everyone what they need. How can we make this child or this student who is not being included in the classes? We can provide that by providing him reasonable accommodations. If he is not able to undergo live synchronous webcasting, we may explore the possibility of asynchronous classrooms so that he can use those things at the time of his need as per the flexibility. So that's equity. However, there is one more thing. The field of health humanities, it also includes the social justice studies, typically the disability studies. If you see that in the first, both of the two images, equality and equity, still there are barriers which are existing. And that's why we can learn from the field of disability studies, which says that disability lies in the environment and not in the individual. My learnings from the field of disability studies is from the field of humanities is that people only have impairments, but it's the society which makes them disabled by its various barriers. For example, in the first image, you can see that the barrier was the physical barrier. A person who is a dwarf is not able to see that because of the lack of, say, stool or a lack of ramps. Similarly, people who are having lack of information and communication, they might, deaf people and blind people, they might feel left behind. Similarly, the attitudinal barriers. So the most appropriate way to bring about social justice is that by removing the barriers. If we just remove the barriers, we can see that it brings liberation. And that's why the health humanities is a field of representation of those who are marginalized. We talked about student to interface, where we touch social justice and digital equity. Please note, I'm not saying digital equality, I'm using the word digital equity. Let's move on to student to content interactions. And in this, how can we include reflective capacity to change the attitude and behavior of clinicians and Indian medical graduate and health professional graduates? Let's see. So here we are bringing a second poll. And the poll is that healthcare professionals working at frontline should be addressed as corona warriors. Let's see what you think. So 69% believe that corona warriors is a perfect terminology for the healthcare professionals who are working at frontline. However, 21% they disagree with this, and 10% are unsure about that. Now, the field of narrative medicine can tell us about the use of metaphors in the times of, say, pandemic or otherwise also. So what is a metaphor? A metaphor is an implicit or hidden comparison between two things which are unrelated. They are quite essential in the development of language, cognition, and culture, and they are very pivotal in developing a response, be it individually or collectively. We saw the example of the metaphor biryani, which was used in Delhi riots by a certain section of politicians to bring disharmony. The WHO has proposed the metaphor social distancing. But if you look in a country like India, which has a huge history of various issues like untouchability, is socially distancing word the most appropriate word? In the field of narrative medicine, we use a term which is close reading. We closely read the words which are being used, the metaphors which we are using. For example, maybe physically distanced, but socially connected. It brings an altogether different meaning, which may be culturally sensitive as well. Waging a war. Is it actually a war? Tsunami of cases and corona warriors. One school of thought has said that there is a danger in using the war metaphor because then the healthcare professionals will be subjected to expectations of heroism and supreme sacrifice. Then the concerns that there is a lack of PPE might be seen as probably unpatriotic, anti-national. Because many people say, we saw that in the Pulwama scenario as well, many journalists use that a soldier is expected to serve, gear or no gear, PPE or no PPE. We need to constantly think about the words which we are choosing. For example, in narrative, we call that connotation and deconnotations. How the metaphors are playing the role of social and structural barriers. We have a duty to care, definitely, but there is also a duty to self-care. And in a condition like corona, we don't want all the healthcare professionals to go at the front line. We need to do proper rationing. And when we are talking about the war metaphors, it is largely the doctors who are hogging the limelights. There are still few people at the front line who are outside the frame. What about the nursing professionals? What about other peoples? So there are still a few people who are outside outside the front line. And this is a poem which has been written by Pooja Premwada for the journal Rhyme, where she talks about people who are outside the frame. I didn't go to any med school. I don't have specialized skills, but human civilizations also need job without fails. The sheets needs to be clean. The floors have to shine. There is invisible drudgery, and that is all mine. So what then is humanity? Is there ever equality? I wish we save each human life and learn compassion from the strike. So we have been using narrative medicine with medical students and other students as well from the physiotherapy background. In our journal Rhyme, we have a series of disarming dialogues where we encourage reflective narratives, and we publish the reflective narrative together with an expert commentary on the same issue. These are the published commentary which have highlighted the ethical dilemmas pertaining to various issues, like, for example, when an intern for the very first time sees something which is troubling her, how can she find respite into that? So these are the things I think which are very apt for our ATCOM curriculum. We can, because we need to have these examples from our own settings, examples from South India, examples from North India, from Northeast India, poems in Hindi, poems in Telugu. What does they mean and how they culturally affect the patient-provider relationship? And recently we have broadened this to the pandemic times, and we have started this new series, Pandemic Praxis, Disarming Dialogues in Ethics and Professionalism, where we can highlight the ethical dilemmas happening because of the pandemic, and we invite an expert from the field of ethics to write a commentary on those ethical dilemmas so that people are enriched with these discussions, and they can use these discussions maybe in their classroom, online classrooms, or maybe when we return from the lockdown in our lecture theaters as well, in ATCOM and self-directed learning as well. The next thing by which we can increase our reflective capacity is by using visual arts. Diagnosis in paintings. The first picture, which you can see on the first slide, is of an old woman, which was infamously used in literature as the Ugly Duchess, the portrait of Princess of Carinthia. Much years later, 150 years later, there was a surgeon and a humanist professor who, along with a student at University College of London, studied this entire painting frame and proposed that the sitting woman had an advanced form of Paget's disease. The next picture portrait is that of a great artist, Jacques-Louis David, the cause of whose death still remains uncertain. But we do have an extraordinary sequence of portraits of this artist, which describes his transition from a handsome middle-aged person to a deformed old man. And during this phase, he developed a swelling on his left side of the jaw. And over a period of 20 years, he developed facial paralysis. Visual artists, they have studied this now and suggest that there was malignant transformation of a pleomorphic adenoma of parotid gland, which possibly led to his death. We have used the first image during foundation course with the new batch. And we have used the last image in our Google Classroom when we covered endocrine physiology early this month. The last one, we used this image and asked the students to go and search about this colossal mystery and write their responses about what this image is all about. What is the history behind this controversial figure? And this image is that of Caspar Hauser and his link with the psychosocial dwarfism. So this is how we can use visual arts to hone humanities in our teachings. There is a resource of visual arts. If you go to the website of the NYU Medical Humanities, there is a literature, arts, and medicine database, which has lots of these images, which are open access, which we can use for our teachings. Next, please. Similarly, we have one more journal, Hectoan International, and this journal contains lots of visual arts as well as poetry also. This is again an open access journal, so you can use these stories to include the history of medicine, the visual arts, to enrich your digital teachings. So we talked about student to interface interaction, student to content. We covered reflective capacity. Let's move on to digital humanities. We are communicating, but what are the other avenues for communicating? Next, please. So in this, I would like to have a show of hands. Can anybody tell me which movie is this all about? Has anybody seen this particular movie? So now we are often using these movie clips and cinema and the documentaries in our educations, and many people call it as a cinema education also. But what we need to be careful about this, the use of films, is that many a times we ask our students to watch films. However, from a humanities perspective, we would like them to read films. There's a difference between watching film and reading film. So when we have had this particular workshop, because we have this rhyme workshops, reviving humanities in medical education, in 2015 in Jarrard Medical College, we asked the participants, and those participants included faculty as well as students. So we told them that you need to watch this movie. The movie is Rashomon, one of Akira Kurosawa's most famous films, and which has been considered as one of the masterpieces in world cinema. But the movie is dated 1951, and as you see, it is a black and white movie. We asked them to see the Japanese version with English subtitles to enhance the linguistic diversity. It's an 88-minute long film. And then we asked them to submit their reflections based on that. And we were happy to see that the Rashomon was successful in evoking lots of emotions. And based on the reflections which those participants submitted, this is the word cloud based on that. And you can see that we can see that they were successful in generating emotions about hope, about understanding power differentials, gender discrimination, culture diversity, communication, and our own biases and prejudices. And there was a very good quote by one of the participants, Janumani Senapati, and which is very apt in current times. And I would like all of you to read that, which is at the bottom of the slide. In addition to that, and when we're talking about communications, we have extensively used theater of the oppressed. Now, this was a paper which was, I think, 1 week ago published in Academic Medicine by Caravello from University of Maastricht as well as Brazil, where they have used theater of the oppressed, and they called it medical education empowered by theater. We also used extensively the theater of the oppressed, and specifically the forum theater can be seen as one of the highest forms as far as the Miller's pyramid is concerned, because in this thing, the spectators turned into spect actors. So this is something which we have been used in the past, and in the current COVID times, we are trying to explore if we can do any virtual forum theater or not. We saw earlier at Malaysia how Dr. Somendra Saha and his team has used online role modeling for students in the ophthalmology department, so which is an effective way. And at the end of it, we will ask your feedback and your experiences if you have used something of that similar. One of the very important thing with the new millennial students is that we need to keep pace with them. And that is also very pertinent with the expectation from one of the role from the Medical Council of India, that we need to be a lifelong learner. And that is why very often we need to keep a pace with the technology. And recently, two important things which are there are podcasts and Twitter. So podcasts, they are on rise in health professional educations, at least specifically in the field of critical care and emergency. There are a lot of topmost journals like New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, JAMA Circulation. They are regularly producing podcasts. And even medical education journals like Medical Education, Clinical Teacher, they are regularly producing podcasts. The British Medical Journal's Medical Humanities Journal has a specific podcast on medical humanities. The University of British Columbia, where Rita Sharon founded the field of reflective narrative medicine, they have a podcast on narrative medicine rounds. There is also a podcast on bedside rounds, and there is a very good podcast by Lisa Meeks from the University of Michigan on doctors with disabilities, how they navigate their journey, and how their experiences are important in improving the doctor-patient relationships. Finally, there is a role for Twitter as well. If you look at these PubMed Index articles, you will see that there is a role for Twitter in almost as a new competency for cardiologists. The power of Twitter, the role of Twitter as a potential disaster risk reduction tool. It has been used in emergencies like, for example, in the Jammu and Kashmir flood. Twitter was used extensively by Indian Army. as well as it was used in pandemics in United States of America as well. They are used in health professional education also, and in inculcating awareness about disability in medicines. So one of the things by which we can use that is you can explore Twitter, and one of the good benefit of Twitter is that if you are overwhelmed by the amount of information which is available over there, you can just go to Twitter list. A Twitter list is a very simple platform where you can create a personal or a private Twitter list. You can add people without these people knowing that they have been added to your particular Twitter list. You don't have to follow them, and all of this information will be available to you. So probably in some other webinar, I would try to give you an hands-on on how to use Twitter in health professional educations. So right now I'll stop with here, and my colleague, Dr. Khan Amer Maroof, will now show you examples of how to use simple things basically in the field of health professional education to inculcate health humanities.
Yeah, very well.
So thank you, Dr. Batyal, Dr. Poonam, Dr. Satyendra. Thanks a lot. So I move on to the next part, and this is about, we'll be discussing about medical humanities group, how it has tried to use the online platforms for promoting medical humanities, using medical humanities, and popularizing it amongst the medical students and even other faculty members. Now, digital humanities, now if we see, medical humanities going online has been criticized by many as an oxymoron, that if it is humanities, it should be more connected to the real life human being rather than that digital virtual human being, virtual patients. But in these times, we don't have any option as such, and we have to change, we have to adapt to the change. And even medical humanities, the expected outcome is this only, that we need to change, we need to adapt the diversity, the challenges. And so I think digital medical humanities is here to stay. In spite of the virtual platform, definitely the facilitator presence is very critical and vital for teaching and learning medical humanities. So what is the background? What are the things that are required in a medical college if they have to use even this online medical humanities? A basic requirement is about a team of interested faculty. Interested faculty. It cannot be mandatory that you have to be in this or you don't have to be in this. Secondly, multiple student groups of diverse interests, that has to be there. The student may create new interests, and newer things may be added day by day, week by week, year by year, depends upon what the students want. We have taken this thing from what we have done in our college. So for some of the societies that we have, there are many, around 15, 20 societies, but here we have written Parvaz, Manchayan, Artifacts, and there are many others for poetry, theater, painting. And different students are free to choose any particular society they will join. And if they want to create some new, they can do that. Voluntary participation is the key. You cannot force humanities by making anything mandatory here. There are certain online tools for medical humanities. I would like a quick poll here. Let us see, what are you using for medical humanities? So which of the following you have used for teaching humanities in last 1 year? You have various options. So around 50% said that they have not used or not taught, but out of those who have said used, WhatsApp is, I think, the major contributor, and second is the Zoom, and closely followed by journals. So WhatsApp has been told as a major contributor here, but most have said that they have not used. Let us see one by one, and we can also learn from your experiences, because many of you have said that you have used it in one way or the other. So these are the certain online tools for medical humanities, which we have some experience of using it in UCMS. Email groups, Google Docs, social messaging apps, journals, Facebook Live, Google Classroom, and webinar platforms, and a mix of these. So let us start by just one or two slides on each, one by one. So email and email groups are one of the most easy to form and very important in medical humanities, where you have to develop a trust, where it can function as an icebreaker also. And asynchronous online communication is what we get there. So there it is better than direct face-to-face conversation, because there when if students have mentioned at places that in direct communication sometimes they don't get that much time, only 2 seconds or 3 seconds. If somebody replies something or somebody says, then that is accepted, and some people take time to process, think, and then bring out what they reflect upon, what they thought about that thing. So they are lost in direct communication. But in asynchronous online communication, the student is free to think, brood over, research over that, and then write the way as the student wants to write it, delete it, again write it, and then send it to you. This has been used by our college, this MHG group, for DD Speak, Theatre of the Oppressed at HIMSS and Jorhat Medical College, and other programs also, uh, as an online component, on-site component. So first component is online, where all the participants or faculty are joined by email groups. They discuss, they communicate, and then there are triggers that are shared, some narrative that are shared, and afterward it culminates into that on-site program that is there. So one is the email groups that can be used. Here there is an example of one email group, email that has been sent by in one of the groups, Dr. Juhi Kalla. So she mentions in that discussion that many things I have just highlighted, that I feel that the moment the students start going for clinical postings, we must inculcate the culture of narrative writing among them. This can help us understand our budding doctors better. So this is one example. Second is the Google Docs, a very simple but very powerful tool to collaborate, to discuss, to understand, to reflect, uh, to resolve conflicts, even to generate discussions, more insights. And this has been the narrative writing workshop and reflective writing workshop with the students. And here I have shared some screenshots of the Google Docs, where the things were being discussed and new issues were being brought up in the things that they have seen. So whatever the students have seen, they have narrated in the Google Docs, shared with the faculty, shared with the, and people have opined on that and the discussion, so that more insight is generated in the particular thing. Simple tools like messaging groups are very powerful. WhatsApp groups are very powerful. It connects students, it connects teachers, it connects students to resources, content. It can generate feedbacks, opinions, you can share videos, and even organize competitions, because they charge up the students very much. For example, competitions, photography competitions, and other competitions, singing, maybe music. And in fact, recently, COVID Contract was an online festival launched by our UCMS students. Because of this lockdown, they have this annual festival of Ripple, but it was not to be held because of this lockdown. So they did an online festival, and in this, many different arts things came into picture. I will show you one example: COVID Contract, where they had a poetry competition, and here they have started the competition on lockdown diaries, where poems and many interesting and good poems are there. You can see on the Rhyme Journal now, because Rhyme Journal started a different separate section called as pandemic virtuosity, for highlighting these issues in the form of poems. Another resource, online resource for medical humanities promotion, is online journals and blogs. It can act as a learning resource material, because at times there are questions that where will we get content for our medical humanities sessions that we want to hold. We want triggers, we want narratives, so we want some baseline information. From where will we get? Online journals are a good resource for, and blogs are a good resource for these things. We have our journal is there, And this journal specifically, I would especially recommend because it is contextualized. In the Indian context, even we are talking about medical humanities, in the Indian context, there are very few narratives or images which are related, which are pertinent to the Indian dimension. So even though there are articles from the international community in rhyme, but then also I will say most of the articles are from India. So this is one place where you can look for many resource materials and even submit. Was a new section of pandemic virtuosity that was started for that poetry that was selected by that competition. Blogs are also very important resource, especially two blogs I would like to mention here, which we look forward to. One is Pedagogy and Theatre of the Oppressed, as Dr. Satyendra has already highlighted by Mrs. Radha. And another is A Mind of My Own by our Dr. Anshu. These blogs are very helpful in understanding the human dimensions of various aspects, and especially because Dr. Anshu is writing this blog. So from a doctor's perspective, things are being discussed. So these are some of the online journals and blogs that we can use and we have used. Another is Facebook Live. Facebook Live is good to for online music competitions. So here we have and poetry recitation things can be done here. So in one of the things that students did was they have started using Facebook Live very frequently now to promote, and the songs that were there were all those songs that help to reduce mental stress, to bring peace, to give hope to the people. So these things can also be used nowadays. Memes, very new entity that we see nowadays. They are catching our attention. Earlier, we used to think, what is memes? This is not up to the mark. But now it is now an accepted technology, I would say, to promote health education. For example, NACO partnered with this National AIDS Control Organization, partnered with the UCL. Not a real department. It does not have a head of department like that. It is just a virtual department where some students are managing. So NACO partnered with the UCMS Department of Memology, those students, and then they launched about AIDS awareness, HIV awareness. So they some of the memes I have posted here, you can see on your screens. So these are interesting ways to promote give the correct information. Google Classroom is one of the things, like Dr. Satyendra mentioned, that they used certain graphics in their physiology teaching through Google Classrooms. The advantage is that mix of methods can be used, and the tracking can be done, what all things have been done, what things have not been done. So Google Classroom is basically to mix many methods into one and keep a track of the things going on. It will be a good tool. Online, this webinars, face-to-face meeting, for example, GoToMeeting or Zoom or WebEx, as we have discussed in earlier webinars. Uh, it is important for showing the instructor presence, that the facilitator is there, and to discuss things, to motivate, to lead, to see where are things going, planning the things at the start, and at the end showcasing of the final outputs. That also can be done, like oral story telling, narrative recitation, poetry recitation, and videos. And discussion on ethical dilemmas can be done using this face-to-face meetings. And communication role play, for example, Dr. Somendra Sahu has showed earlier in one of the communication role plays. So that was good to see that the face-to-face, we have not used this much in our institute. Let us see how we can make use of this in future. So at the end, I would like to say that these are some of the very basic things that are very important. It's the students who will lead medical humanities in our medical colleges. What they want, what groups they want to form, they want to lead it. We can't make it mandatory, number one, I think so. And we can't say that I can't dictate that this should be done and this should not be done very specifically. This is what mode should be used, this mode should not be used. Because if students are not, humanities is about creativity, and if the students are not free to create, not free to experiment, then the whole experiment falls flat. So creativity cannot be made mandatory, that you have to be creative in front of me right now. We have to desist from that temptation what we have in our other medical education subjects and other teaching things that we have. Here it is a kind of free space, as we have seen in some of the examples here. Mostly students have led, and as Dr. Navjeevan Singh sir also says, that we bask in the glory of our students at times, and medical humanities gives ample opportunities for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amir. Coming to the questions, Poonam, can you just see what are the few major questions for Satinder and Amir?
So I think for Dr. Satinder, the most importantly asked question was the Twitter Journal Club. That's something which none of us have really heard about too much.
Yeah.
If you could elaborate.
Yeah, so in fact, because of the technical glitch, I was keen to show you an example of a Twitter list, but that didn't happen. But there's a recent, publication in JAMA on March 18 this year itself, 2020, by Roxana Denz-Jow. So maybe you can go through that article and see how it goes, because there are a few features in Twitter which makes it good to use these general clubs. I mean, you can use a particular hashtag, you can restrict the audience, and that way you can use it. I have not used it, so I have not gone through the paper as well. In the chat box, I have given the reference of this particular paper. So maybe you can go through that, and we can come up with something interesting in the future.
Okay, we have one. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think this is a great learning thing, because like the COVID, I think pandemic has brought out a lot of our creativity and try to teach us to be more humane, and learning about humanities and COVID, I think will take us a long way ahead. This is one thing which is like united the entire country, the world, and we have developed and learned a lot from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both for teaching, for learning, for practicing, every which way.
Okay. So we thank you all the speakers and all the participants who spend their valuable time to this very important issue, which is now has become very relevant in the present situation. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.